David Grusch Congressional Testimony. The UFO whistleblower, a decorated intelligence officer, testifies under oath that the U.S. government possesses recovered non-human craft and biological material. Late morning sunlight filters through the windows of the Rayburn House Office building in Washington, D.C. on July 26, 2023. Inside, 3 witnesses prepare to offer testimony before the House Oversight Committee's National Security Subcommittee. Among them sits David Charles Grusch, a former U.S. Air Force officer and intelligence official whose sworn statements over the next several hours will mark the most significant formal disclosure event regarding unidentified aerial phenomena in American governmental history. Grusch's path to this congressional hearing begins not with sensational claims to media outlets, but through the methodical procedures of the intelligence community's internal oversight mechanisms. From 2019 to 2021, he serves as the National Reconnaissance Office's representative to the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, a position that grants him access to classified information across multiple intelligence agencies. Following that assignment, he assumes the role of co-lead for UAP analysis at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. These positions place him at the intersection of America's most sensitive intelligence operations and the government's official investigation into unexplained aerial phenomena. During his tenure in these roles, Grusch learns through official channels of what he describes as legacy programs involving the recovery and reverse engineering of craft of non-human origin. The information comes not through rumor or speculation, but through documented intelligence, reporting, and testimony from colleagues with direct program access. What he discovers troubles him deeply, not merely because of the extraordinary nature of the claims, but because of what he characterizes as deliberate oversight bypassing that has kept these programs hidden from congressional awareness for decades. In 2021, Grusch makes a decision that will define the remainder of his professional life. Rather than approaching journalists or public forums, he initiates the formal whistleblower process through the intelligence community's Inspector General. The complaint he files contains classified information that he cannot share publicly, details about programs he describes as operating outside normal congressional oversight mechanisms. The Inspector General's office conducts its investigation according to established protocols, examining Grusch's claims against available evidence and assessing his credibility as a witness. The finding that emerges from this investigation carries profound institutional weight. The Inspector General determines that Grusch's complaint is both credible and urgent, a designation that under normal circumstances would trigger immediate notification to the Congressional Intelligence Committees. This determination represents the first formal validation of Grusch's claims, an acknowledgement from within the intelligence community's own oversight structure that his testimony warrants serious attention. The finding never reaches Congress through normal channels, a blockage that Grusch later characterizes as part of the broader pattern of oversight evasion he has described. For nearly 2 years, Grusch works through classified channels, providing detailed testimony to congressional staff in secure facilities where he can discuss specifics that cannot be revealed in open settings. He briefs members of the intelligence committees behind closed doors, walking them through what he knows about crash retrieval operations, reverse engineering efforts, and the compartmented access programs that he alleges have kept this information from proper congressional oversight. Representative Anna Paulina Luna, after receiving one such classified briefing, describes herself as shaken by what Grusch has shared. The public first learns of Grusch's whistleblower complaint in June 2023, when the investigative journalism outlet The Debrief publishes a detailed account of his claims. The story sends shockwaves through both mainstream media and the UAP research community. Here is not an anonymous source or a retired official speaking decades after the fact, but a current whistleblower with active security clearances, documented credentials, and formal Inspector General validation. The details are extraordinary. Grusch alleges that the United States government has recovered multiple craft of non-human origin, that it has retrieved biological material from non-human intelligence, and that it has operated programs to reverse engineer this technology outside of normal oversight mechanisms. The publication of these claims creates immediate pressure for public accountability. Within weeks, the House Oversight Committee schedules a hearing on UAPs and government transparency. Grusch will testify alongside Commander David Fravor, the Navy pilot who encountered the now famous Tic Tac object during the USS Nimitz incident in 2004, and Ryan Grave, a former F/A-18 pilot who has testified about regular UAP encounters during Navy training exercises off the East Coast. The hearing room fills with journalists, congressional staff, and members of the public who have waited decades for this moment. Cameras capture every exchange as Grusch raises his right hand and swears to tell the truth before the committee. What follows is testimony unprecedented in American governmental history. A former intelligence official with documented credentials and official whistleblower status stating under oath that the United States government possesses recovered non-human technology and biological specimens. Grusch chooses his words carefully, aware that he navigates the boundary between public disclosure and classified information. When asked directly whether the government has recovered craft of non-human origin, he responds affirmatively. When pressed for specifics about locations, dates, or program names, he states that such details are classified and that he will provide them in closed session. The tension between what he can say publicly and what he knows in classified contexts becomes the defining characteristic of his testimony. Representative Tim Burchett asks whether Grusch has personally seen the craft he describes. Grusch clarifies that he has not, but that he has interviewed dozens of individuals with direct program access who have provided him with detailed testimony about recovery operations and reverse engineering efforts. He describes a process of careful vetting, corroborating claims across multiple independent sources, many of whom he identifies as senior officials with decades of service in compartmented programs. The questioning turns to the mechanisms that have allegedly kept these programs hidden. Grusch testifies that the operations he describes have been funded through what he characterizes as inappropriate or misallocated resources, bypassing normal congressional appropriations oversight. He states that the extreme secrecy surrounding these programs has been enforced through means that he believes may be illegal, including the intimidation of potential whistleblowers. When Representative Nancy Mace asks whether anyone has been harmed in connection with these programs, Grusch's response sends a chill through the hearing room. He states that he knows of individuals who have been threatened and that attempts have been made to harm people with knowledge of these operations. He declines to provide specifics in open session, but confirms that he has provided this information to the Inspector General. Some individuals, he testifies, have lost their lives in circumstances he describes as suspicious, though he acknowledges he cannot prove direct causation in open testimony. Grusch also reveals that he has personally experienced retaliation following his whistleblower activity. Investigators from the Pentagon's Inspector General office have visited his home. He describes the experience as intimidating, a clear message that his decision to come forward has not been without professional and personal cost. His attorney, who has accompanied him to the hearing, confirms that Grusch understood the risks involved in public testimony and chose to proceed regardless. The bipartisan nature of the congressional response proves as significant as Grusch's testimony itself. Representatives from both parties express concern about the oversight implications of his claims, regardless of their personal beliefs about non-human technology. The fundamental question transcends the exotic nature of the allegations. If programs of this magnitude and sensitivity have operated without proper congressional oversight, what does that reveal about the effectiveness of existing checks and balances? The Department of Defense responds to Grusch's testimony with a carefully worded statement indicating that it has found no verifiable evidence supporting claims of recovered non-human craft or reverse engineering programs. This official denial stands in stark contrast to the intelligence community Inspector General's finding that Grusch's complaint is credible and urgent. The contradiction between these two institutional positions becomes a focal point for congressional investigators seeking to understand what the government knows and when it knew it. In the months following the hearing, legislative action accelerates. The UAP Disclosure Act of 2023, modeled partly on the JFK Records Collection Act, passes in modified form as part of the National Defense Authorization Act. The legislation establishes a review board for UAP-related records and creates new legal frameworks for whistleblower protection in UAP disclosures. The bill mandates controlled disclosure of UAP-related information, with specific provisions for declassification timelines and public release mechanisms. Though weakened from its original form through negotiations, the Act represents the most significant legislative action on UAPs since the Air Force's Project Blue Book ended in 1969. Grusch's testimony forces a fundamental reassessment of the UAP issue within official Washington. For decades, the topic has been treated as either a joke or a fringe concern, relegated to late-night talk shows and conspiracy theory forums. The Robertson Panel's 1952 recommendation to debunk and dismiss UAP reports had successfully marginalized the subject within mainstream discourse. Grusch's appearance before Congress, backed by Inspector General validation and resulting in concrete legislative action, marks the formal transition of UAPs from public curiosity to acknowledged national security concern. The question of verification remains open. Grusch has not provided physical evidence in public settings, nor has the government confirmed the existence of the programs he describes. What he has provided is sworn testimony, Inspector General validation, corroborating statements from other witnesses, and sufficient detail to prompt bipartisan congressional action. Whether subsequent investigations will substantiate his specific claims about recovered craft and biological material, his testimony has already achieved what decades of civilian UAP research could not, forcing the issue onto the congressional agenda with institutional backing and legislative consequences. The personal cost to Grusch becomes evident in interviews following the hearing. He describes the decision to come forward as agonizing, weighing his oath to protect classified information against his obligation to report what he characterizes as illegal oversight evasion. He speaks of sleepless nights, strained relationships, and the knowledge that his professional reputation now rests entirely on claims that many still find impossible to believe. Yet he also expresses conviction that the truth, whatever it ultimately proves to be, matters more than personal comfort or career advancement. Other witnesses begin to emerge in the wake of Grusch's testimony. Former military personnel, intelligence officials, and aerospace contractors contact congressional offices with their own accounts of UAP encounters or knowledge of recovery programs. Some provide testimony in classified settings. Others remain anonymous, fearful of the professional and personal consequences that Grusch has experienced. The hearing creates what some describe as a permission structure, a demonstration that coming forward through official channels can lead to institutional support rather than ridicule or punishment. The international response to Grusch's testimony varies. Some foreign governments express interest in coordinating UAP research and information sharing. Others remain silent, unwilling to engage publicly with claims that challenge conventional understanding of aerospace technology and human history. Within the global UAP research community, Grusch's testimony is received as vindication by some, and with skepticism by others who have heard similar claims before without subsequent verification. The scientific community largely withholds judgment, noting that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence and that testimony, however credible the witness, cannot substitute for physical proof or peer-reviewed analysis. Some researchers call for greater academic involvement in UAP investigation, arguing that the issue deserves serious scientific attention regardless of whether the most exotic claims prove accurate. Others warn against the dangers of pseudoscience and the importance of maintaining rigorous evidentiary standards. As the calendar turns toward 2024, congressional committees continue their investigation. Classified briefings proceed behind closed doors. The UAP Disclosure Acts Review Board begins its work. Additional witnesses come forward. The Department of Defense maintains its official position while acknowledging ongoing investigation of UAP incidents through the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. The contradiction between official denial and whistleblower testimony remains unresolved, a tension that congressional oversight attempts to navigate. David Grusch's July 26, 2023, testimony before the House Oversight Committee represents a watershed moment in the official treatment of unidentified aerial phenomena. Whether history ultimately validates his specific claims about recovered non-human technology, the institutional response to his testimony has already altered the landscape of UAP disclosure. An intelligence official with documented credentials has testified under oath. An inspector general has found his claims credible and urgent. Congress has responded with legislation and ongoing investigation. The question is no longer whether UAPs deserves serious attention, but what the government knows, how long it has known it, and what mechanisms of accountability will ensure proper oversight of programs that may have operated in the shadows for decades. If you found this case compelling, subscribe to Vanishing Roads for more documented paranormal investigations from around the world. This story was created with AI assistance based on documented case files. All events reference real investigations and reported incidents.